qualities of a sports leader. The knowledge of sports skills is a very strong quality for sports leaders because they are transferring their knowledge of sport to another group of people. If they do not have a great knowledge of sport, it could have a very negative effect on the lesson that they're trying to provide. The reason that this could have a negative effect is because they could teach the wrong thing to somebody and they could be using it in their everyday life. So for example, let's say Miss Barrett's, my PE teacher, taught us that in badminton, when the number of the score is even, you shot from the left side, you serve from the left side, whereas you're meant to serve from the right side when the amount of points are even. So I'll just carry on using that, thinking that I know what I'm doing, but I really don't. The next quality is understanding the physical needs of participants. The needs of participants, that will also be a very important quality because there will be people you are leading that could not be physically able to do events. A good sports leader will be able to adapt to this. So let's say I've got a group of 7 year 9s and one of them has a very bad leg at the moment. And there was a little situation like this where a couple of weeks back we did our warm-ups with year 9s, and one of them had a very bad knee, and the activity that we did involve running. So I adapted around that situation and I made sure that only him and only him was the only one that was allowed to walk, and the rest of them carried on doing it. But as he was doing it, he was sort of speed walking, so not fully running. So I adapted that to that situation very well. This was a success because he carried on getting involved in the sport. So he wasn't left out just because he had an injury, but he was still participating, but just up to the maximum that he could do. The next quality is knowledge of rules and laws. This is very important for a sports leader to know because they are passing their knowledge of the rules and laws to their athletes. And demonstrating the wrong knowledge can have a negative effect. It can have a negative effect because me giving somebody me not giving somebody the right rules and laws of a game, it could have a negative effect because if I was to say, for example, I told somebody, we're playing a football match, and I told somebody that, for example, I didn't tell somebody that, like, let's say you see the halfway, there's an offside rule, but you're allowed to be onside as long as you're in your own half. As long as you're in your own half, no matter what happens, you're onside, so you can be behind all of the other team's defending players, but you're still onside as long as you're in your own half. But if I didn't tell somebody that, they wouldn't know that, so they'll just carry on for the rest of their lives, or not for the rest of their lives, but for maybe a long period of time, thinking that they have to be behind at least one defending player from the other team. This could be a very negative effect because somebody could then go on and pass that knowledge to somebody else, and it will be your fault because you've told them that it's right, and they'll be thinking that it's right, so they may pass it on to somebody else, and it is the wrong information. Understanding the mental needs of participant is important because a sports leader should consider the content of the session and be able to include appropriate activities, and people take part in sports for different reasons, which can be physical and mental for reasons. So somebody could take part, they could take part in many reasons. This could be mental or physical. So somebody could take part in sport to relieve stress, they could do it to lose weight or to feel good. So if somebody was to take part in sport to feel good or to relieve stress, or to look good, they'll just be doing a lot of exercise. So to relieve stress, they could like take out their anger like in sports, let's say like boxing or something, or they could go for running for a long time. You know what I mean? Characteristics of an effective sports leader. Patience is a very important characteristic of a sports leader. A sports leader should be patient in all activities and have a calm persona. This means that sports activities should not be rushed at all. A sports leader should try to develop everyone within each session. This could mean doing different activities for people with different abilities. So for example, I could have a group of people, and like maybe two out of 8 of them could be very developed. So maybe I would move them on to doing something very difficult, and other people do the same thing I was telling them, but the aim of it is to carry on making them develop. So an example of this is like, I could have 2 people, I could be teaching a basketball session, and 2 people out of the 8 could already be in a basketball team, so they could already have done the things that I'm trying to teach. So maybe I'll move them on to do something separate, and that will be more intense and harder for them to do, so they're developing, because I don't want to make them do something that they already know how to do
something that they're very confident with. So maybe I'll move them up a level and carry on doing the same thing with the rest of them. This will be a success because then by doing this, I'll be developing all of them in the way that I can. I'll be developing every single player in the way that I can. A sports leader should be able to show a good level of consistency in each session they take. They can do this by displaying the same behaviour and characteristics so that participants are able to feel comfortable. By saying this, I'm meaning if I was to come in one day and I had a very good attitude, I was very very vibrant towards my students, they'll expect me to be like that every session that I take. So then if I was to come in the next day and I was really dull, they won't really feel confident in me and they wouldn't be able to rely on me to be the same person that I am every time. An example of this is like, let's say I was coming in, they don't know, let's say an example of this is me coming in being very strict, shouting at all of them, then I'll come in the next day and I'm very kind, I'm just being very patient with them. They wouldn't know what I've got to do next. They wouldn't be very comfortable around me because they wouldn't really know me properly. Doing this by showing consistency will be like a very success because then the people that you're coaching will be very confident in you. They'll be very reliant on you, so they'll know what they're coming in for every session that they do come to for. The roles of an effective sports leader. They should be a motivator. So by being a motivator, they'll be encouraging people to take part in activity to the best way they can possible. So doing it to the best of their ability. So me walking around, I'm coaching a basketball lesson. I see people just bouncing the ball. They're not doing it right. They're not keeping their head up. They're not bending their knees, keeping their back straight. And I'm not motivating them at all to do the best that they can. That means that I'm not a very effective sports leader. You have to be an instructor as well, so I have to be very demanding. Like when I'm coaching a lesson, I have to instruct them. If I see somebody doing something wrong, like bouncing the ball with their palm instead of the fingertips, I have to instruct them. I have to make sure that they're doing it right. So I'll say to them like fingertips. Make sure you're using your fingertips. I have to be a guardian. Because when I do coach a group of people, I'm the person that's being put in place as the parent. So they're sort of like my children. So I have to look after them. I have to make sure that they're safe at all times. Like there's no equipment left around wherever I am coaching them that could be very harmful to them. This will be a success because I'm keeping them as safe as possible. So the likeliness of injury due to things that I could have prevented will be very less likely. I have to be an organizer. So before I do go into a session, I should have already had a plan in mind of how the session would have gone. So I wouldn't be making it up off the top of my head. Maybe the night before, the week before, I could have organised a session that maybe this session would be focused on like shooting, like maybe just stand shots. Like I couldn't just go into a session and say, oh, we're going to start with shooting, then next I wouldn't know what to say, so I'll be like, I need to be very confident with the session that I'm about to produce, so I would have had it already planned out. This will be a success because I'll be very sure of it, so I'll be very sure of the session that I'm teaching, so there won't be any gaps. It'll just be very straightforward. This is my conclusion, psychological factors. A sports leader should be very familiar with the personalities of the athletes because the personalities have a very big impact on the way that the individual behaves. A personality is a sum of a person's characteristics. Extrovert or introverts are the two categories classifying an individual's personality. An extrovert is a person that is very much a team player, and an introvert is somebody that prefers to do things by themselves. An example of an extrovert would be somebody like Frank Lampard. He's always out on the pitch, he's always in the centre, and he's always shouting, he's getting everybody involved. He loves to play in the team, he's releasing the ball, getting the ball, he's encouraging everybody. An example of an introvert is somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo, he likes to show off, get everything done himself, and the chances of him releasing the ball are very unlikely. And the outcomes of an introvert, it can be good and bad. Like if you're somebody like Ronaldo that has the many talents that he does, being an introvert for him, he does always get a positive outcome most of the times. And extrovert, the outcome of that is very well because you're being a team motivator, you're being in the centre. So let's say extrovert will basically be the captain of a team. If you know what I'm saying. The captain of a team will be an extrovert because they're the motivator, they're the instructor, they're sort of the backbone to the team. So they're always around in every sort of a sports leader should have a very good motivator in his or her, should be a very good motivator in his or her athletes to give them the drive to take part in that activity to the best of their ability. A motivator is a positive influence on somebody's attitude or drive towards something. There are two categories of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is like motivating in a sport for just enjoyment or just for praise. Extrinsic is like getting involved in a sport just for the prize, like for the reward. Does anybody think they could give me an example of a group that would be intrinsic motivated? Nobody?
Young children.
Yeah, young children. That's because, let's say a Sunday league team, a football team, they don't get paid. Their prizes aren't money, they don't get paid to play football, they do it for the enjoyment, like just for the praise. Let's say a team like Man United, they are extrinsic motivated because they're participating for the reward, like the cups, the Premier League, they're always in it. If there wasn't a reward, I don't really think that you'll catch Man United playing because that's all they really are out there for. The outcome of an intrinsic motivator would be like, it would be positive because they're actually doing it for enjoyment. So they're not participating for anything but themselves. So they're doing it for fun, basically, just to sort of keep their momentum up. An extrinsic motivator, like the outcomes of that, it can be sometimes pretty ugly because when you win, like when you get what you're after, you're very happy. But when you don't, you can just think, you can be really down about it. So let's say Manchester United and Man City last year. They was both in it to win the Premier League, but Man United ended up winning. They're both extrinsically motivated. Man United ended up being happy, and Man City ended up being down. We had players crying at the end of the match because they was that close to winning it, but they didn't win it. When a group of people become a team, they go through 4 development stages. These are forming, storming, norming, and performing. Forming is when you get your team together, like you first off start off with your team, and storming is when you're just like going through the basics, like you're not really like getting along, you're trying your best to get along like with your teammates. Norming is when it all starts to become normal. And then when it all starts to become normal, that's when you go through performing. And performing is when you start to perform to the best of your ability, you're all very confident in your teammates. The time it takes for these leaders to go through these stages may vary. So an example of somebody that is at the moment forming could be David Moyes. Does anybody know why I say David Moyes would be going through forming at the moment? Yes, you, John?
Because he's a new manager, managing a new team.
Yeah, he's with a new team, so he hasn't really got the attitudes of each and every one of the teammates that he's managing. So he's actually going through forming right now. And then he's at the same time, so he's just going through forming. Now, a good example that will go through all of them right now would be somebody like Arsene Wenger. Because he went through forming, because he wasn't really doing well. They haven't won a cup for around 8 years. Then he went through around the storming area. So then that's when he started. Then he made his big purchase, the Ozil purchase. Then he went through norming, so it started becoming normal to them. And at the moment, they're performing as they're at the top of the Premier League right now. So they're actually performing very well. So the outcome of all of them will vary. So with forming, the outcome of forming is that you won't really perform well at all because you've just started, so you need to get used to the teammates. The storming, the outcome will be slightly better than forming, but it's not really much of a development because you're still trying to get through the basics. Then norming, the outcome of that will be very better because it's starting to become normal to you, you're getting used to your teammates, and performing will have the best outcome because that's when you start getting to the best of your abilities, working together as a team. Cohesion can be split into 2 categories. Social and task. However, both types of cohesion influence the performance of the team. Social cohesion is how much certain players enjoy each other's company, and task cohesion is how well a team work together to achieve a certain goal. So both of these will have an effect of the team's performance. So for example, when Rooney was the star of Man United, like before Van Persie came, so he was a star. Like he was the main man. And then when Van Persie came along, Van Persie sort of took his spotlight. So maybe they could have gone through a situation where they didn't really like each other because they was both competing for the same spot. So like that was social cohesion because maybe they didn't enjoy each other's company too much. Maybe Van Persie might not have minded because Van Persie was already up there, he was the man, and Rooney might not have liked Van Persie's company too much in the matches. Task cohesion is how well a team work together to achieve a certain goal. So let's say Arsenal have a positive task cohesion at the moment because they're all working together. They don't really have a main man at the moment. They're all working together to make sure that the team work well. The outcome of task cohesion, like positive task cohesion, will be good because you're working as a team to do the best that you possibly can be at. So Arsenal are a very good example of that. My references.